welcome back to the channel. Since the last video, we've got a good amount of progress done. Just want to update everybody on what's going on. We've got the waterproofing on. I don't know if I explained that in the last video or not, but that guy came over yesterday, sprayed the waterproofing on there, and then he sticks this fiberglass board on there. And the idea behind that is the fiberglass allows the water a channel to get down to the footer drain. So they stick it on there, and then you backfill right against that fiberglass board, and that's where the water goes down, finds a channel to get down to the footer drain. But yesterday, me and Dad got out here and we knocked out putting all these seal plates on, and that was a good amount of work, to be honest. Those 16-foot 2x10s, pressure treated, are pretty heavy, so it took us about all day to do that. He was working on the ground, and I was up on the ladder, up and down the ladder, probably about 150, 200 times, but we got it done nonetheless. So next step is getting the floor poured in the basement. I called the guy this morning, left him a message to call me back, so hopefully we can get that scheduled up and get that done in the next week or so. And then once that's done, we can start framing. The truss company is building the trusses right now for the floor, and should see those in maybe 2-3 weeks. So in the meantime, we're going to try to get this done, the floor poured. I'm going to try to get the garage level brought up. Could walk over and show you what that's looking like right now. We have a good amount of fill that has to go in the garage to bring that floor level up. So before we can put our rock in there and vapor barrier and all that and pour the floor. So we still have a good amount to do there. So that's what it looks like right now. A bunch of the old block pieces that we had left over, threw them in there. And they did some waterproofing in here. He said in covered areas they do waterproofing 4 foot up the wall. That's just to allow any water that does get down there to get to the perimeter drain. The only place that water could really get in here is right here and under this lintel where it bridges from the house to the garage, or over there. There's another lintel that bridges right there. So that's the only place water could ever really get in to there, but it could potentially run in there and then get into your basement if you didn't have this waterproofing 4 feet up. So we did that. The floor level is actually going to be right about, the top of the floor will be right at that seam on that block right there. So we're coming down 3 courses of block, and that'll be the top of the garage floor. So we got to bring our grade up to at least there. So bring it up to the top of the that course there. So that'll allow us 4 inches of gravel and 4 inches of concrete for the garage floor. So we got a good amount of fill that we got to get in there. When they pumped the sails, that's where they blew their lines out, so that kind of added a little bit of fill in there. That helps. I hated to waste that much concrete. I'd figured on these sails for 8.5 yards, and the pump driver got here and he said I better get 10. Well, now I see why. And most of it goes on the ground. So that's just that's just what happens when you use a pump, I guess. So, but yeah, and around the front here, this is around the front of the house. So this is going to be a covered area, like from that wall there down to about right in here somewhere is going to be a covered front porch. So they could have only went 4 foot up on the wall there, but I told him just to go up that little extra right there, just so it would be even all the way across the front. And not sure why he stuck that little piece on the garage wall right there, but yeah, whatever. So I got that around the front, and that's where our grade's going to be. Our final grade will probably actually be just above that with the topsoil. So it'll be just above that, and then that'll put us, if our feet are standing there, then the top of the front porch floor should be about shoulder height on me when I'm standing on the ground. So it shouldn't be too bad. So right here I've already backfilled where I dug out for the sewer outlet. I've got a piece of 10-foot pipe stubbed out right there at the end of it. So I need to connect it on down there to the septic tank. I dug this by hand. I don't want to do that anymore. So we're gonna get an excavator to dig the rest of the way. That digging that shell by hands, it's not fun. So we'll walk down here in the basement. Oh, one other thing I wanted to point out. When you're putting these seal plates down, one thing to consider is this. This is called seal. It goes between the plate and the block. And all that does is creates a seal there between the plate and the block, so air can't blow in under the seal plate and into the house. So, and I'm sure it probably helps with water too, if water ever decides to go through there. So you do that, and then one other thing to consider too, let me go up here and see if I can get a shot of it. When you're putting your plates down, you need to pay attention to the end grain of your wood to make sure. See this right here? I don't know if you can see it or not, but the grain of that wood is cupping downward like this. If it were cupping upward and you're putting that bolt in the center, as that plate dries, it could cause this edge and this edge of this board to want to stick up. So by paying attention to your end grain, putting it down and putting the bolt in the center like that, it will allow it to pull down. And if it does decide to do any cupping, it can't. The bolt holds it down and keeps it from trying to cup. So that's one thing to consider when doing this. And another thing that I did was on these ends, there's a 4-foot span between that bolt and that bolt. Well, the boards break kind of somewhere in the middle there. So if you run some screws in to tie those two ends together, they're less likely to want to stick up whenever they dry. So that's another thing to consider whenever you're putting on the plates. Now I will admit, when we started, I kind of got ahead of myself, and we had 2 or 3 of the plates down before I started paying attention to the end grain. But that's just my inexperience of doing it. But we got them down nonetheless, and hopefully they're not going to be sitting there drying out too much before we get trusses set on them anyway. So, all right, so down here, I'd already went over the footers. We've got those ready to go. Got the rebar in them. They're good to go. Our plumbing here had to be pressure tested because it goes under the slab before we pour the concrete. So I went and bought these plugs that you tighten that wing nut down and they expand out inside the pipe and creates a seal. It's got a rubber seal in there. I got those, and then I got one out there outside on the outlet that I showed you there a minute ago. And then on this end, this is the vent slash drain. So this is what's called a wet vent. This is a piece of 2" here, and it's a wet vent. Basically, it's the vent for the toilet, as well as the drain for the sink. So your vent has to be half the size, at least half the size of your drain. So we got a 4" drain. I needed a 2" vent. And so this can double as a vent and a drain. And code allows that. So I got this rubber coupling, put it on there, put me a little valve stem on top of here, like for a wheel on a car, and bolted it down. It's got a little gasket here. And then I took the air compressor and I compressed this whole system. And I compressed it to like 5 to 7 psi and just let it set. Came back a little bit later and checked it to make sure that it hadn't bled off. And it had bled off the first time, but it ended up being, I soaped all the joints so you could see bubbles if there was a leak. And there ended up being a leak right around this temporary cap. So I had to take it out and clean the inside, put the cap back on, repressurize it, make sure it hold pressure, and it did. It done fine. The inspector, he came up and he checked to make sure that it had pressure, and so we could bury it. And then we're good to go on that. And then this over here is my radon vent. I went over before, I believe, so I've already got it back filled in. Got the gravel on it. It's just stubbed up. It's ready to go. I can pour concrete around that. So, and I went and I picked up my vapor barrier. That's those boxes right there. That's enough for 3,000 square feet. That's a little more than what I need. This is only a little over 2,500 square feet down here, but what I don't use here, I'll use on the garage. So no harm, no foul there. And as you can see, I still need just a little bit more rock before we can pour this floor. So I've got a load coming tomorrow. Another 14-ton that I'll use for in here as well as around the perimeter, just to give me a little more rock around the perimeter. And so our floor level here will end up being at that seam on that block. So the idea is here is that I'll put a board from outside of this wall to outside over here. Yeah, 8 inches up. I'll just either screw it to the wall there or brace it some way that it can't bow out right through here or anything, and then we'll pour the floor up level with that. And then so the floor will actually come out through the doorway a little bit out to this edge right here. And so then that then I can put my door in and everything on that. I'll have to put a couple plates right here and right here to put my door in, but I can do that, no problem. Here's a little closer shot of this waterproofing. So it's pretty thick, rubberized. It's like an emulsified rubber is what he called it. So, and they spray it on pretty thick. You can see it's kind of puddled down there. It's still not 100% dry, but it's skinned over anyway. And then they put this fiberglass board on. And that fiberglass, as you can see, it's not real dense. It's denser than like pink insulation, but it's not real dense still yet. So it creates that channel for water to go down. So they say. Hopefully it works. And other than that, all I've been doing is just cleaning up around here. I cleaned up all the block pieces and threw them in the garage there. I've been trying to get this tarp out from under this sand, this leftover sand. It's not really working that great. This stuff's heavy, but I'll get it. I got a dozer coming next week. We'll get it. So, about that, this pile of dirt is a lot bigger than what it looks like from this angle. If I can walk down here on the lower side, I can show you. This is a massive pile of dirt. This is what we took out of the basement. So you see it drops off quite a bit off this other side. And my silt barrier is kind of torn and tattered there. It didn't last long. So we'll turn around. There's the other side of that pile of dirt. It's massive. So that's what we're going to use for a backfill on the front. He's bringing the dozer over next week, and that's what we're going to do, is push that dirt out, level out the front end, front yard of the house, and try to get all that straightened out. It's a pretty big pile of dirt. And I don't know if you remember from my other episodes, but this right here was the last, where the last leaching line went out for my septic. So that pile of dirt's pretty much sitting on top of the septic system right now. So hopefully that's okay. But we got that, and then we got, right here's the septic tank. Whenever they were purging the line for the pump, this concrete ran right down in the hole on top of my outlet, or the inlet for the septic tank. So I'm gonna have to get that busted out of there, get it back uncovered so we can connect it back up there. But that's kind of what's been going on. Not a whole lot, just slow progress. Hopefully here in a couple weeks we'll have trusses and we'll start framing this thing. Start going up quick with it then, hopefully. And then the work starts. Until then, y'all just keep checking back.